Hi, this is Jonathan Rosenhead, Jerusalem psychotherapist. This week's Torah and Psychology post of Vayeishev is titled The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Because sometimes we can see people in the world and they just seem to be successful at whatever they do and whatever situation they find themselves in. They have the Midas touch. Whatever they touch turns to gold. And we can ask ourselves, are some people just born to be highly effective and successful, to be leaders? Or is it something that can be nurtured, that can be learned? And in Stephen Covey's internationally acclaimed book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he explains that leadership and being effective and successful is something that can be learned. It's nurtured based on what he calls habits, the habits of highly effective people, where he looks at the interplay between a person's values and principles. And he sees this as how it determines a person's behavior and ultimately also the consequences of this behavior. And what follows in the book is a succession where a person goes along what he calls the maturity continuum, which looks at the person's behaviors, values, and how this develops from a point of view of dependency, where they are reliant on other people, to independence, where they are purely focused on themselves, they are detached from other people, and then finally the third level, which is the highest level on this continuum, which is interdependence, where people are connected, where a person's effectiveness and success comes about through a collaborative effort, where a leader adopts a mantra of we, where he understands that his own success is through the success also of other people. It's a win-win situation, and it's not just being purely focused on yourself, on your own talents and skills and being detached from other people, but through this collaborative effort and cooperation, they become a highly effective and successful person. So let's look at Yosef Tzaddik. Yosef seems to be a highly effective and a highly successful person. He is naturally beautiful. He is talented, intelligent, and he seems to succeed in whatever he does. He's Yaakov Avinu's favored son. He confides in him. He gives him preferential treatment. He is the head above all his brothers in the eyes of Yaakov Avinu. And then even when he goes to Potiphar's home and becomes a servant, he becomes the head servant. The Pesukim describe that everything he does is highly successful, and he is able to help Potiphar, and he's elevated to being the head servant. And then even when he goes to prison, we would think that things should be pretty bad for him when he's in prison. But again, we're told that he becomes the head prisoner. He's highly successful and becomes a leader even within prison. So we see whatever situation Yosef Tzaddik is in, he is highly effective and highly successful. But is this true? If we look from the outside, take an external view of what's going on, we actually see a descent in his standing. He started off as Yaakov Avinu's star, his golden child, with talents and abilities. But then what happens is he goes and ultimately becomes a servant. He is sold by his brothers. He has these dreams that views himself as being he lords himself over his brothers. He taps into this view of seeing himself as being special and unique. But he's stuck on this level of independence, being separate from the rest of his brothers. And the brothers throw him into a pit. He's sold. He goes into slavery. Yes, he becomes the head of Potiphar's home, but ultimately he is just a glorified servant. And even with his success and with his beauty, what happens is he's thrown into prison. And in prison, even though he becomes this leading prisoner, we have to say that he is just a glorified prisoner, a highly effective and successful person who is just ultimately, as we see from this week's parasha, he is now just a prisoner. He's not the star of Yaakov Avinu's home. He is this deterioration. It's a dramatic fall in standing. So we could say he's a highly effective and successful person, but how does it help him? Really, he's stuck on this stage of independence, of being detached from other people, and it's not helped him at all. So we have to say that he is not necessarily using the habits and skills of a highly effective and successful person. But what follows is that Yosef Tzaddik does develop along this maturity continuum to this final point, this third level of interdependence. Because when he is in Potiphar's home, he's then thrown into prison, and he then enters into the situation where this fall in standing, where he now has to use his talents and abilities to help other people, to enter into the shoes of other people, to be empathetic and to connect with other people. His ability to interpret dreams is for the benefit of the Batla and the baker in prison, and ultimately he does help, and the Sar HaMashkim is freed. And we see an interesting point that the Psukim describe is that Yosef Tzaddik asked the Sar HaMashkim at the end of this week's parasha to remember him, to tell over to Paro what happened, and maybe then Paro will free him. And what we see is a development from independence, of being so stuck and focused within himself, perhaps a selfish perspective of himself. And now he's connecting with other people. He's beseeching other people, asking them for help. He's helping other people. So as the Mefarshim describe, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing that Yosef asked the Sar HaMashkim for help and didn't necessarily just rely on Hashem, we see that he is connecting with other people. There's an interdependence. There's a collaborative effort where he's tapping into this mantra of we. And as we see, what follows in next week's parasha is that he then leaves prison. He then uses his ability to interpret dreams to help Paro, to help the whole of Mitzrayim. He gets a promotion. He becomes leader of Mitzrayim, second only to Paro. We see that he is moving up again in the world. But he attributes his success to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He understands that his success and effectiveness in life is not because of himself, this independence, but rather interdependence, this connection with other people, this connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and understanding that his success and the ability for him to be effective, highly effective as a person, is because he has reached this level of interdependence. Have a great Shabbos and keep well.